Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of Exploration Tech. My name is Jared Hackford. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at Brilliance. Really excited to be meeting with Cheri Morales, a project manager at Neogen, to talk about delivering digital projects on time. Definitely a topic that captures the interest of many, because who doesn't want to deliver a project on time and on budget? I'm going to pass it to Lori McDonald and let her introduce herself.
Yes, I'm very excited about the conversation that we're having today. A little bit about me. I started Brilliance in 1998. My background is in computer electrical engineering. I went to school at Purdue, and through an internship, I ended up at NASA Johnson Space Center, where I eventually worked as a flight controller for the space shuttle program. A super fun experience. I ended up meeting my husband there. He also was an engineering student at Purdue, also was a flight controller at NASA. He eventually went to work for Rockwell Automation, and through a series of events, he had a job promotion to Rockwell's headquarters, which are in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so we relocated to Milwaukee in 1998, and I was trying to figure out what could be as cool as space. And so I decided to start a web development company. Seemed like a neat place to be. And with my technical background, and Dave managed the largest data warehouse at Rockwell Automation, so really understood the B2B complexities with product data. And we ended up realizing that we were uniquely equipped to work with manufacturers and distributors implementing digital commerce solutions. And so that became Brilliance's niche. We've grown. Dave left Rockwell 10 years ago, and now he leads our development team. We're a team of 23, made the Inc. 5000 list last year. And along that growth journey, one of the parts of that story is that we've been really honored to have Neogen as a client and to be a part of their digital journey as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But through that, I had the opportunity to meet Cheri Morales and see how amazing she is at managing projects and leading her team there and really pulling them all together to get something done. And so I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to have today. Cheri, I'd love to let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Cheri Morales. I've worked at Neogen for 14 years now. Started out as customer service manager, worked as a process coordinator and product management, and then started the PMO office at Neogen like three and a half years ago. So we're fairly new. We were lucky enough, we had an exchange of CEOs, and the new CEO that came in was determined to start this office because he knew that every single department basically needed a project manager. So we started small. As we go down the road here, there will be more and more project managers at Neogen. So that's kind of my background over the last 14 years.
And do you want to share your life motto with us, Cheri? Because I think everyone needs to hear it.
Work like a captain and play like a pirate.
I love it. Perfect way to start today's session. Before we get into it, a couple housekeeping items. If you have a minute, please give Brilliance a follow on LinkedIn. I'd also recommend following Neogen. I'm sure if you'd like, Cheri would love to connect with you on LinkedIn as well.
At Brilliance, we offer an on-time and on-budget guarantee for our work, which is something that we're proud to stand behind. One of the requirements for our guarantee to be true is that our customers need to meet the timeline that we have for their deliverables. And that's a requirement for us to be able to deliver on our commitments to our clients. And yet we know that can be challenging in organizations where there are so many competing priorities. We're not the only project going on. And so I'm really excited about the conversation that we're having today. Before we get into the discussion, I thought it'd be helpful to explain a little bit about Neogen's digital journey and share your role in that journey. Neogen works to protect and improve food and animal safety around the world. Neogen has seen a lot of growth through acquisition that resulted in a variety of tech stacks, that complicates the job of IT and marketing. And Neogen had divisions with different websites that resulted in a disjointed experience for end users. Neogen has teams in 12 countries and a sales presence in 140. And so really, Neogen has a need to reach customers globally. And back in 2019, Neogen selected Optimized Lake Commerce Cloud, then it was called Episerver, to bring those multiple divisions into one digital experience And now Neogen is headed into the fourth phase of that project. And Cheri, you've served as the project manager across that journey. So we'll focus on phase 3 and certainly fill in any of the gaps in that story I might have missed. But I'm curious, what made phase 3, the last phase that was completed, a challenge to come in on time and enable us all to stay on budget?
The duration to complete the project was half the time of the other 2 phases. Phase 1 and phase 2 we had 10 months for each phase, but we obviously were not on time. We wanted them to be, under 7 months. So we obviously went over on both of those phases. So we needed a win. My team needed a win. We needed to be confident enough that we could attain our goals and hit that deadline. But in doing that, it was all about the planning. We knew the phase was going to start in January of 2021. So I started speaking with management and supervisors of the team members for that phase 3, like June, 6 months before the project started. It was all about planning the resources. Management buy-in was huge for phase 3. We didn't have that as much in the other 2 phases. So the prep work done with the management team for the resources helped us a great deal finish that project in half the time that the other phases did. I think also immersing myself into the project, being there for the team members, knowing the resources I needed. I needed one resource the entire month of January. We had it booked on their calendar, and I was communicating with them every step of the way.
It's become common practice now that we're however many months into the pandemic, but it's good to reflect and think about what's changed and how your approach to managing projects has changed due to the pandemic. Can you touch on that?
Definitely. Since the pandemic has started, any project that started in our department, one of the risks on our risk register is the global pandemic and the resources, because that can affect your timeline, your scope, everything. So we're adding extra contingencies into our projects itself. We're allowing a little bit more time. And I think empathy is the biggest thing that across the board needs to be done. It needs to be done in every project, but since the pandemic, I have to put myself in the team members' shoes and understand, okay, we went from an office one day to the next day. We needed to make sure we're all set up properly with phone, computer, Teams, meetings, video, and then having everything else going on in the background. That one of them has 3 kids, one of them is pregnant, has another kid. There has to be empathy there for it to work.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, Cheri, and especially I know as a lot of organizations are feeling additional pressure in terms of finding new talent and retaining talent on their team. And everyone is feeling this pressure due to the pandemic and so many other things. There's just so much going on in people's lives. I think really it's just such a great place of leadership for you and for Neogen to be in a place where empathy is something that you're really leading with, because I really believe that's what people are looking for from employers.
Definitely. And I make sure they all have vacation. I ask about every 6 months for PTO, and I've got someone on vacation right now that hasn't been able to go and get on a plane in a year and a half, and she's going to be fantastic when she gets back. They've got to take some personal time and step away.
Yeah, definitely. What lessons did you learn from earlier phases of Neogen's digital transformation that you were able to apply for this most recent phase?
We do like a post-mortem lessons learned after each phase. So after the last 2 phases, I knew that the escalation needed to occur in a timely fashion. Issues would come up, I would escalate to a sponsor or leadership, and it needed to be addressed immediately. So we knew that in phase 3, with the management buy-in that I had, that seemed to go a lot smoother. We needed to have attainable goals too. I don't know if the goals were really attainable to say, okay, first phase is only going to take 7 months and it end up taking 10 to 11. Were we really looking at the project timeline correctly? we are going to be very cautious with this current phase that we're going into with phase 4, that Brilliance, we are tracking your time as well as Neogen's time. And we've never collaborated like that before. So I know that that will help as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I know many times in the past, Brilliance looks at how we plan our schedules and says, well, here's where we need things from the customer. Now we're working much more collaboratively in terms of you saying, well, we're not going to be able to hit that, or saying, here's what we need instead. Here's what we need to be successful. I just think that that's a really great way to be very proactive and thoughtful about how you're aware of your own resources to meet it.
And the Brilliance resources too, definitely. You know, if your developers can get 30 tasks done in 5 weeks, we still need to look at your QA, your BA, and then when it's tossed over to us, you know, and then we punt it back to you. Since we're in phase 4 now, we kind of know this back and forth, and so we're much smarter.
When we started doing these exploration tech sessions, our primary goal was how can we help others at this moment? We started at the start of the pandemic and thought, like, how can we be giving back and educating people on things that we're familiar with? And so my guess is the people that signed up today are really interested in hearing from someone that has the experience that you have, Cheri, around managing digital projects. You know, what would you tell someone who's going through a digital project like yours right now?
Right. The correct planning. I mean, it's planning, organizing. Management buy-in is huge. If you've got management buy-in, that means that you're going to obtain resources needed, which is going to help your timeline, and then just planning ahead. If you need to take 2 to 3 months to plan before the project starts, do it, because the rest of the project will go very smooth. I mean, there's always that basic 101 project management as well. You know, filling out a project charter with your team is going to help you figure out your scope, your budget, timeline, stakeholders. Risk register is huge. If you even need to run like a pre-mortem to figure out what your risk could be, that is a great activity to do with your team members. We're starting phase 4 in a couple weeks, and I think that I'm going to run that, even though this is our 4th phase. But I think we really do need to look at the risks, because we don't talk about that as much. I don't know if a lot of companies do. I think before the PMO at Neogen, I don't know if that word was even used that much. And so we're, with our innovation office and the PMO, we are really trying to take that home with all of the team members. Communication is huge too. Communication plan, you've got a stakeholder register, figure out how you're going to communicate with your team. What are the best ways to communicate with them? A lot of times some people just want to use Teams. They want to chat on Teams, and that's how I find them. They've got 400 emails in their inbox, and they're never going to see my message. Sometimes it's better to email someone because they're on their emails every 10 minutes, and they're answering their emails. I have their cell phone numbers. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's recommended, but I do. And so some of them I have to text. You just kind of have to figure out that it all goes with the respect and trust of your team players. Listening is key too. I mean, basically, I learn everything from them. You are as good as your team that surrounds you. And the team that surrounds me right now is just top notch. I'm lucky. I'm very lucky.
That's awesome. When I hear you talk about being aware of the risks and how sometimes organizations don't really look at that, it makes me think about Annie Duke and her book, Thinking in Bets, and talking about pre-mortems. And one of the things she talks about is how sometimes we judge the quality of our decisions based on whether or not they turn out well, which is not actually true. And it causes us to not want to confront things that might go wrong, right?
Right.
And so how much better it is to think about what are all the ways this could go wrong.
And a project manager has to remember that when I'm reporting up, I might not be reporting good things, but my job is to just report it. Then they're either going to come to me and say, okay, have you escalated this? Have you taken care of this? You report the good, the bad, all of it. You have to report it all because you want to catch it quick.
Right. Exactly. And as organizations, we should be thankful when people are reporting good and bad, right? Not just good, right? Because that helps us to respond quickly to make better decisions. So
right. And if you have this risk register before you even start, you're also figuring out mitigation. So you're going to figure out how to mitigate it before it
Yeah.
even happens. So if it
Yeah.
does happen, oh, it's on my risk register, this is what we're going to do first.
Yep.
So, and of course things happen that aren't documented. Not in a million years you wouldn't think it would happen. Of course it happens. And then you've got to pull together and figure out a solution.
So speaking of like managing things that might not be what you expect, how do you manage the fact that team members have other things that they need to do?
Yeah, this is a balancing act. I mean, through and through. They have day jobs. I mean, they all have day jobs. And when you're on a project, it's a second job. So you've got to be really cautious of that. Finding team members and the resources to actually be on the team can be a difficult journey, because you don't always want the manager and supervisor. You may not even want the person underneath them, but more so the person that actually is doing the job. And they're excited to be on the project. They're excited to be on the team, and they have input. They're being listened to finally, and they know that it's going to improve their work life.
Yeah, some people might be really engaged because they might not otherwise have opportunities like that to participate in something.
Exactly.
And that makes a real difference for people when they're really
Thank you.
excited for the opportunity to contribute. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's talking to the managers though, because obviously the project manager is not anyone's manager on the team. And so you've got to have this trust and respect with them to even say, okay, we're going to need to talk to your manager, your supervisor, or whatever that is.
Do you have other processes that you use? What would be your tips from a process perspective, how to stay on track?
Communication, weekly status reports, the professional relationships I have with many people at Neogen helps as well. There's a respect, trust. Being at the company for 14 years, I'm experienced enough to know who the experts are. And if the expert can't be on the team, I know that I can go to them if needed. I think that goes a long ways.
I'm curious. I know we were focused on phase 3, but you have a lot of great experience, again, reflecting on phase 1 and phase 2. And when you did run into challenges, have you put anything into place that you have a plan if you have a roadblock to limit the disruption of your timeline if something was to go wrong in future phases?
Yes, we definitely done a risk register now so that we know what the risks are. The sponsors know that when I escalate an issue, it needs to be looked at that same day. The collaboration that we have now with our core team, we all have a lot of different avenues that we can go to. And when I first started out, I basically was kind of dumped into the project like the day before it started. So for me, it was learning Brilliance as well as the Neogen team. So yeah, we've came a long way, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
And you've got to remember too that we're all working from home, which has been a good thing. But I worked with the Lansing group, and I work with the Lincoln group, and then the Lexington group, and I'm doing it all from my office in my house. So it's thankful that I have project managers at each of those facilities that I could always go to and say, I need you to go tap so-and-so, on the shoulder. I need their attention. And so that was helpful too, is having some of my peers in those locations to help.
It's funny when you reference risk register, something that we try to do as an organization when we're engaging at the beginning of a project is thinking through, does the organization have the right people in place, and kind of talking through our experience and what we would have as far as expectations for that. But there are times where they may not have the resources that we would expect or that they probably want in order to support the project. So what do you do if you don't have enough resources for the work?
That's a great question. In the middle of phase 2, I have basically an A team and a B team. Like I was explaining a little bit earlier, that during the pandemic, we've had some issues with people being out. UAT phase was up, and I had 7 of the 9 people that were out. We had to scramble, to figure out who was going to be back up, and that won't occur anymore. As I am producing a list for testers for phase 4, I actually have a support list as well. So I've got a core team and a support team. I'm fortunate that we've got resources to do that. If someone only has, 6 people to be able to do it, it's when you've got to look at your timeline and you've got to adjust, because you do not want them to drown. If you only have 6 or 7 people and they're the only ones that can do this, you have to put in the contingencies and you have to adjust the timeline.
Yeah, and I'd love to highlight a point that you made there, Cheri, because people may miss it in that if you haven't been through a project like this before. But one of the things that can delay Brilliance or delay a project getting done is if a customer doesn't have people time to review the work we've done, to give us feedback so that we can keep going or figure out if there are things that need to be changed. And so to your point, you had people ready to do that, but then they weren't available, right? So having a plan in place to ensure you've got people available to review, to test, and give feedback is really important.
Right, and then that's just not even a pandemic. This is just life. That these lists should be done all the time, no matter what.
Yeah.
Because growing families and FMLA, everything, anything you can think of can occur.
Yep. Going into a project, I'm curious if there are certain areas that are more time consuming than others in terms of a digital project.
I think, planning is one, like you said, finding the resources and time. And I know that we've talked a little bit about what's taken so much time in this digital project. I think one of the biggest jobs that our team has had is providing the product info for PIM. And it's crazy. The phase 3 had the most products of all of our divisions put together. They have the largest, and we did it in half the time. So I have to give huge kudos to that group, because that takes up the most time and it's a difficult job.
Yeah, and it's so important for a successful site to have good product data in place. So that makes a lot of sense.
You have to. You can't have a page without having that absolutely correct. And you will tweak it 300 times until it's correct.
So you've referenced that relationships have really helped. Tell us more about how that's made a difference.
I think it's just the experience that I have knowing these subject matter experts, trying to get them on my team first. If I can't get them on the team, then I definitely know I can go to them. Finding an executive sponsor, which is mostly off of like our management council. I know most of those individuals, and so they're always very, I don't know if I should say happy, but they're respectful when I ask them to be an executive sponsor for me. I've had the relationship since customer service days. I used to go to the other divisions, in Lexington and Lincoln, and I would meet the people, and I think that personal interaction has helped me a great deal as well. And I like people.
I'd like to go back to feedback for aspiring project managers or someone who's trying to elevate their career. If you had to reflect on what has made you successful in your role, which you clearly are, what would you say has been most vital?
Organized, so that I can plan properly. Relationships, build that relationship quickly with the people that you need to. Show them the respect that they deserve. They will do likewise back to you. Provide a trusting environment. They know that they can go to you and you will handle the situation mature and the way that it should be handled. It's all about trust.
Absolutely. Lori, anything you'd like to add to that before I jump into an audience question?
Well, I was just reflecting on the fact, Cheri, that I was so impressed with the way that you and Kat and others on your team organized that celebration at the end of phase 3. And to me, I think it just speaks to the way you're celebrating, you're building those relationships and trust. And that's a lot of, I think, what creates that sense of engagement where people really want to be a part of the future work that's happening and give it all they can. So I just kudos to you. And to me, it was a reminder to celebrate when something's done and the benefit of that team time together.
It definitely was special. We hadn't seen each other for almost, over a year. And so we see each other on the camera every day, but we hadn't physically been able to sit down and have some food and be able to talk to each other. It was wonderful. I highly recommend that if anyone can do that.
Yeah.
So we do have time for one audience question, and there was a specific one around project management software tools and recommendations that anybody here might have. Cheri, would you like to start?
Neogen actually uses Workfront. We've had Workfront now for like 3 or 4 years. So that has been the tool that globally we are using. Each department has been trained on it, so I recommend Workfront. I mean, that's what we're using. But I know Brilliance uses MavenLink, and we do a lot of work in there as well. So Laura, you could probably go into more details.
Yeah. We chose to use MavenLink because, from a time tracking and reporting standpoint, it also supports our overall business operations, and it's kind of focused on project management for professional services organizations. I know we have clients that we work with in their tools like Jira or sometimes Azure DevOps as some. And so there are obviously pros and cons of different tools that are out there. I think what can be beneficial is to look at what other features you might need organizationally that you might benefit from in terms of a comparison of different tools out there. I know in cases where we're using Azure DevOps, it's often integrated into other aspects of the development pipeline as well.
Yeah. I think you got to look at the makeup of your team as well. Are you marketing heavy? And usually some of the tools start to separate themselves as well in which direction you want to go with them. Well, I want to say a special thank you again to Cheri. Cheri, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us and support us in this. We truly value, the partnership we have with you and all that you do to support Neogen and the Brilliance team. So thank you for taking time to support us.
You're welcome. And enjoyed it much.
Excellent. Yeah, we will be sending an update out shortly for future Exploration Tech sessions, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And the recording from this session will be sent out in the next day or two. So again, thank you, Cheri, and everybody have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks.